sold the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
From the 6th floor of 3 Financial Center in West Little Rock, Arkansas, it is the Get Ready for the Future show, where our mission is to help you find, protect, and share true financial independence. Good afternoon. I'm John Shrewsbury, in for Scott Inman, who is taking a little bit of vacation this summer. And with me today is Candace Stanley, who is our lead advisor on my advisor team in the Bryant office. So
good morning.
We get to not only meet with clients, but do the show now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to do all the things together. Let's go.
And we're going to eschew any reference to the B team because Scott's not here.
B team?
B team. No, not at
no
all.
such thing.
Let me start off the show by just a quick programming note. We had talked about Chris Rippey, the estate planning attorney one of the estate planning attorneys that we work with here at GenWealth, being on our show next week. And there's this little thing that Chris does, which is being an attorney, and therefore he has to go to court. And so his schedule is pretty well dictated by the courts. And so he's got a conflict on being on our show next week. So keep an eye out. We will have Chris on the show a little bit later on, but obviously he's got higher and better duties to take care of rather than come talk to us. So it'll be we'll have a further announcement on that for you in due time. So let's go ahead and get started with some questions. We've got lots of questions today and lots of answers as well. So our first question today comes from Chris in Russellville. Chris writes, I'm 54 with $690,000 saved for retirement. That's good. I want to retire at 62, but I'm not sure if I'm on track. If I max out contributions, can you tell me if I'm able to retire in 8 years? Chris, thank you so much for your question. We appreciate it. And congratulations, by the way, on having that amount of money saved up for retirement. But Candace, there is a lot more that we would need to know before we could actually tell Chris one way or the other whether he's on track or not.
Yeah, one of the first things I would want to know is Chris, are you married? Or are you single? Or even are you divorced? Those things actually do come into play. And they're helpful to know when putting together your plan. Retirement isn't an individual act. It's a family act or a household act. Right. So there's a lot more that will go into that.
Yeah, and I think that as we kind of weave our way through these things, this would be good for Chris to note so he can fully communicate with whoever he's working with as an advisor. And Chris, if you haven't got an advisor, we'd be glad to help you. But the married thing is a big deal. So that's number one. Secondly, what is it that we're trying to do? The number one thing that I always ask is, okay, where is it we're going? What's our destination? What is our intention in doing anything? And so when it comes to retirement, we have to ask that question. What is it that we're trying to do? Meaning, how much income are we needing to create in retirement? Now, that's usually relevant in relation to your current income. Most people either say, well, I want about as much as I'm making now or somewhere in the neighborhood of what I'm making now. And so we have to understand what our destination is before we can head out on that journey. And that income question, Candace, is one of those things that you think is very, very basic, very simple, but it's amazing how often that question stumps people when we sit down in the client meeting room here at GenWealth.
It does, because usually we'll hear, well, how much do I need to have saved for retirement? Well, that's a nebulous question. It depends. How much income do you need? And the plan is really pegged on answering that question first.
And you have to think about this from the standpoint that if you're making $50,000 a year, that's a whole lot easier to replace in terms of income than if you're making $250,000 a year. Not only do you have to have a lot more money to generate that income, but Social Security is going to play a much larger role in someone's overall income if their target is $50,000 a year, as opposed to someone who is targeting $250,000 a year. Social Security still plays an important role in both cases, but it's really very relevant in the $50,000 scenario as opposed to that $250,000 scenario.
Sure. And another thing that I'll want to know is, do you still have a mortgage? Will you still have a mortgage in retirement? Hopefully that's paid off by the time we get to retirement. But if you have to carry it a few more years into retirement, we need to know that too and adjust accordingly.
And we would create a plan just so we can kind of go a little bit further into that issue. If there is a mortgage, that's not a killer as far as retirement is concerned.
No, but it might push you farther out in time.
Right. And what we would try to do is to build a plan to increase your income to take care of that mortgage, and then decrease your income once that mortgage is taken care of.
Sure, because that's a huge line item. And so once that's done, then maybe you don't need as much income after it's paid off.
Candace, another interesting part of this that we really need to address with Chris from Russellville is, how are your assets invested? Do you have a 401k? Are you in an IRA account? Because one of the things Chris referenced in his question was, if I max out contributions, can you tell me if I can retire in 8 years? Well, each of those instruments, 401k or IRA, basically have different levels of investment that you can make each year. 401k has a lot higher contribution availability to you, so you can put a lot more into a 401k. If your company doesn't have a 401k where you work and you're trying to do this through an IRA, I think the IRA limitation is going to be about somewhere around a third of what you can put into a 401k plan.
Right. So are we maxing out contributions for a 401k, an IRA, hopefully both? And then maybe, does your 401k have a match? That's going to help accelerate things as well. So those are all things that we'll need to know and dive into before we create a plan.
And then I think you've got to look at those investments and say, okay, what is it that I'm invested in my 401k plan, and what is that likely to do for me over the next 8 years? Not only the investments that you currently have, but the investments that you will put money into going forward. We do a lot with 401k plans where we're coaching people to allocate their lump sum money in a 401k more conservatively than they're allocating their new contributions, because what we want to be able to do in that case is take advantage of volatile markets and dollar cost average those contributions into the plan, but we don't want that big lump sum of money fluctuating up and down like we would want the contribution money to do. And so to kind of illustrate this point, we've got a great graphic that really does point out what I would call the sequence of return risk in retirement. And those of you who are watching on our live feed can see this, but let me describe this for our radio listeners. This graphic shows an accumulation or basically a mountain chart where on the blue side of the chart, on the left-hand side of the chart, you see where the investments and the growth of those investments and savings has grown over time until you get to retirement, and then you go into the income distribution phase. But what we're talking about in terms of a sequence of return risk is this area about 5 to 10 years before your actual retirement date, and that area 5 to 10 years after your retirement date. That is known as the retirement red zone. What does that mean? It means that that is a zone where the volatility of your investments as they pertain to your lump sum of money is very critical. So let's think about it this way. Remember back in 2008 where the old saying was, my 401k turned into a 201k and I couldn't retire. You've heard that from people before.
Absolutely.
And so that 401k balance went down, and because it went down right before they retired, they were in a situation where they didn't feel like they could pull the trigger on retirement. That's what you want to try to avoid with the large lump sum of money that you have right before you retire. If you think about those folks that put off retirement in 2008, that risk still applies today. That is what is called sequence risk in our industry. That's the term for it. But we call it the retirement red zone because it's very analogous to what happens inside the 20-yard line with a football game. If you don't score there, then you've got a problem. If you don't score, or if you fumble the ball there, then you really have a problem because the other team goes down and scores. That's a 14-point swing. You're now now way behind in the game. And so that retirement red zone risk is a big, big deal when it comes to what Chris is talking about here. And so you'd want to sit down with an advisor and be sure that your allocation is done properly. And I think that Candace, that alludes to he's asked for a prescription, but there's a lot that has to go into the diagnosis.
Yeah, so we need to run several tests before we could really answer Chris's question. He has a target time date of 8 years, and so we just need to make sure that he's invested properly, not to overshoot, but not to undershoot as well.
Absolutely. Chris, your question is the question of the week on the Get Ready for the Future show. Congratulations to Chris for reaching out. And because it is the question of the week, we are going to send him a Get Ready for the Future show tumbler. Chris, if you'll just email us at show@getreadyforthefuture.com. That's SHOW@getreadyforthefuture.com. We will get that tumbler in the mail to you. Our next question comes from Angela in Benton. She writes, I want to get as much as possible out of Social Security. How do I maximize my benefit? I'm 60 years old, divorced, and have worked in my current career for about 15 years. Angela, thank you so much for your question. Candace, Social Security is something that we deal with on a regular basis, but Angela's situation is a little bit different.
Sure. She mentions her career was about 15 years, her current career. Did she have a career prior to that? Or was she staying at home, maybe taking care of the household until the divorce? Then we also want to know, how long were you married? We need to be married at least for 10 years and possibly could take our ex's benefit if it's higher than our own worker's benefit. But we had to be married 10 years in order to take advantage of that. So we would want to ask those questions as well. They're not clearly illustrated on your Social Security statement, so it may take a phone call to Social Security Administration.
Yeah, if you go to Social Security and sit down with them, what you're going to need is some type of proof that you were married to your ex, like a divorce decree or something along those lines. And they can probably access through the records your ex's record and figure out what a divorced spouse benefit would be.
Sure.
Now, that takes care of the possibility of her being able to claim a divorced spouse's benefit. But let's talk about her benefit. Most people think that Social Security is based on the last 3 or 5 years, and they get it confused with pension calculations because most pension calculations are based on the highest 3 years or highest 5 years of your earnings. Social Security is a little bit different. Social Security actually calculates a benefit based on your highest 35 years of earnings. And so obviously, she has enough credits to qualify on her own, but we don't really know what that looks like in terms of her own benefit versus what she could draw from a divorced spouse benefit.
Sure. So in those 15 years, like John said, she has enough working credits to get Social Security. But again, was there a career prior to? But hopefully now in those last 15 years, she's in her highest earnings years anyway, which could definitely boost her benefit.
Yeah, and I think you've got to think about, number one, when she wants to retire and what other assets that she has. If she wants to retire at 62, but she doesn't have a lot of money, then she's just going to have to claim her own benefit or divorced spouse benefit at age 62. But if there is money in 401k and IRAs and things of that nature, then it might be easier to look at pushing that Social Security age all the way out to maybe a full retirement age at 67, or potentially, Candace, I would think 70 would be something that I would want to know what those numbers look like in terms of her own benefit.
Sure. Maybe there are enough assets to bridge the gap until we're age 70. And so that would really optimize her benefit.
With the limited earnings history, let's go back to that for just a second, because she kind of alludes to a limited earnings history, and that could be the play that you want to do that brings in that spouse, that divorced spouse benefit. Most people go, man, I didn't even know that I could claim against a divorced spouse. If you were married for 10 years, you can do that, and you get 50% of what your ex's benefit full retirement age benefit would be, let's consider that you retire and draw your benefit at age 67, then you get 50% of that full retirement benefit that your ex-spouse would have. The question comes up sometimes, do I have to involve my ex-spouse?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah, do I have, what's the answer to that?
Yes. No, you don't. They won't even know that you've even claimed against their benefit. They do not have to be notified. They don't have to be signed off on anything. So you just go to the Social Security Administration and tell them what you're trying to do.
We have sophisticated software here at GenWealth that takes all of the big picture into account. We can figure out what that ex-spouse benefit looks like. We can figure out what your own benefit looks like. If we have just a little bit of information from you, we can follow through and get that information. But what you really want to look at is not Social Security in a vacuum. Candace, how many times do people come into our office and they have segregated in their mind, they've separated their assets as far as 401k and IRA and their Social Security, and they got their pension over here, and they just kind of do this mental accounting thing, and it really doesn't work that way.
Yeah, we actually met with a client last week that was trying to do just that. Okay, here are my assets over here. I want to draw, 4% off of it, and this is my Social Security over here. So this is what my income should look like, but they were checking to be sure, thank goodness. But no, that's not really how it works. We want to insert Social Security or any other pensions and guaranteed sources of income, and then adjust what might be income from your other assets. And that's how we preserve them as well.
I often use the word picture that building a retirement income plan is kind of like playing with a set of Legos. You can build it this way, or you can build it this way, or you can build it this way. Mm-hmm. And it all depends on what the outcome that you're trying to shoot for. If you're looking for the highest level of income and the most security that you could possibly get, that's one outcome. If you're looking for maybe some other outcome, you might build it a different way. But really, that is where the customization of a retirement income plan comes into play, because the retirement income plan needs to be based on you and your needs, not some cookie cutter formula that I take Social Security at 62 or full retirement age or 70. There are no rules of thumb. Those don't apply. What really applies is, how do we create the outcome that you're looking for? And in the retirement income game, the outcome that you're looking for is income. So thank you, Angela, for your question, and give us a call if we can help in some way. If you've got questions that you want to participate in the Get Ready for the Future show with, you can text those questions to us at 501-381-5228. That's 501-381-5228. to hear your question answered on the air, or you can send us an email at show@getreadyforthefuture.com. Up next is Glenn from Little Rock. Glenn writes to us, gold is always a big talking point, but I've been hearing a lot about copper lately. What are your thoughts, and is this something that we should be paying attention to? Glenn, thanks for your question. Basically, in a word, no, I don't.
That was easy.
Next question. No, let's talk about this for just a second. Gold and copper are both what I call shiny objects. They get lots of attention, but they have very little utilization. And here's what I mean by that. First of all, let's understand that the value of any commodity, be it gold, copper, wheat, whatever the case may be, the value is speculative. The value is based on whatever someone will pay for it at any particular point in time. Understand that gold and copper are commodity investments, and they don't have what we would call any intrinsic value to them. But we get a lot of questions about gold and now copper, because copper has been one of those things that has pulled back, and they think that there may be a bit of a rally in copper or what have you. But I don't know that is the place, Candace, for your real retirement money.
It also reminds me about folks that will ask us about cryptocurrency. This is kind of the same thing.
Yep.
And I would caution our audience to verify your sources and where you're getting this information, and also think about, what are they trying to do? They're trying to get you to do something. There's a reason behind that. And you really want to meet with an advisor who is looking out for your best interest and maybe not follow just maybe what we see on TV or hear on the radio, except for our show, of course. But online, especially, social media is going to be a huge one there. I see some folks sometimes, posting, oh, guys, you should hurry up and do this. Well, they're doing it, but there's a reason that they're doing it too, and it may not be in your best interest to jump on board.
Let's be sure to cover this base. There are certainly a lot of valuable uses for copper. Now, obviously, everything in our society runs on technology right now, and copper is used very frequently in technological uses. Electric vehicles, buildings, power supplies, things of that nature. And artificial intelligence is really kind of driving some utilization of copper. And that has created a higher demand for that particular commodity. But just like any other commodity, that demand can change rather quickly. And so I'm just not a person that wants to speculate with my retirement money, and I don't think many of our clients want speculative investments for their retirement money. So let's think about this from the standpoint of what the value is. And in the book that Janet and I wrote, Your Retirement Should Be More, we talk about the big hunk of gold that suddenly fell from the sky and landed in your backyard. Candace, if that happened to you, I'm sure your husband would be out there kind of concerned about whether his building got knocked down or not, his shop.
Yes, if anybody knows my husband, you've heard about the shop.
Yes, yes, we've heard about the shop all over the GenWealth land. But he would be concerned, first of all, about the shop. But then secondly, he'd be like, okay, I guess we're rich now.
Yeah, what do we do with this? Well, I guess we would have to get some tools and start chipping away at it, right?
Right.
And try to figure out how to sell it.
Right.
Right. And then we could get our money out of it.
And then you've got that commodity, that gold. Then you've got to find somebody that will buy it from you at whatever price you think it's worth. And so it's this, but that rock has no intrinsic value. It doesn't produce anything. It doesn't make a profit.
Right.
There's no book value to it. If you understand the financial term book value, that is, if you took a company and sold off all of its assets, what would you get from it? Not without any earnings or anything from that company. That is what is called the book value of that company. Well, what is the book value of gold? The book value of gold is frankly zero because it doesn't do anything for you. But if you actually have a speculative market in gold, then you can go and actually buy or sell it on the open market. But that's not necessarily the way that I think retirement income planning or retirement planning as a whole should be done, because that's much more aligned with gambling.
Yeah, and we don't gamble with retirement money. Now, if you've got some money sitting on the sidelines, you've got some money in savings, and you want to throw a little bit at gold or copper, and I'd mentioned crypto, that's fine. That's on you, right? But when we're talking about retirement income, that's where we come into play, and we're not going to speculate or gamble with such precious assets, such as what's going to produce your income when you retire.
Right. And now let me say that some of the portfolios that we invest in, there may be some commodity sleeves in those portfolios, and there may be a small amount of that is allocated to a copper or gold investment or something of that nature. I'm not saying that it is not worthy of having some sliver of a place in your portfolio, but I think that you have to think about this from the standpoint of, is it being professionally managed? And is there some science and mathematics behind when to buy and when to sell and all that type of thing? That's really not the role of an investor per se. I think that is the role of a professional money manager to understand all the dynamics that may be going around on that. But here's what drives most of this. It's just exactly what you said. Water cooler talk, chats online.
Yeah.
Twitter or whatever they call it now, X or whatever.
I can't stop calling it Twitter.
No, I can't. I can't call it X. It sounds dirty if I call it X. But anyway, the portfolios, again, are professionally managed, and they have the ability to move in and out of those assets and have the knowledge base to move in and out of those assets at an appropriate time. I think this is, again, just a good example of shiny objects that get attention. Everything that glitters, metaphorically, is not gold. If you've got questions, we would love to entertain those questions with you. Call or text them to 501-381-5228 to hear your question answered on the air, or you can send us an email at show@getreadyforthefuture.com. Let's go to our next question from Sandy, who came in via email. Sandy writes, I currently live in what was always my dream home. We bought the house for just under $500,000 in 2018. But I think with the markets, the way it's gone the last few years, and improvements that we've made, we could get $700,000 or better out of it. 5 bedrooms, 3,800 square feet, pool, and outdoor area. It's just me and my husband living here, but our grandkids do come to visit some, and it's nice to have space for them. As we get older, though, I'm not sure if we should downsize before we retire. What do you think about this decision? What do we need to think about in this decision? Sandy, thank you for your email on that question. Man, there's a lot there, Candace, and as someone who is in the process of selling a house right now, and someone who is living in what would call a dream house. The two are not related, by the way. There's a lot going on here. Obviously, we've been through a time in the real estate market where there's been and continues to be just incredible price appreciation. But price appreciation really is only one factor that needs to come into play here.
Sure. As we get older, and then we're thinking about retirement, and then we retire, those early years are our go-go years, right? We may be able to take care of a property, no problem. But then we start getting into our slow-go years and then our no-go years. And so is that property going to be an anchor? Is it going to cause you problems? Are you going to have to hire folks and spend unnecessary money? Or does it make sense to downsize and it be a little bit more manageable for you?
I think about this from the standpoint of and we have clients come in all the time going, I don't know if I need to downsize or not. My house is paid for. Can I go buy something else? And they get into a little bit of a problem here from the standpoint of, yes, their house is appreciated, but they've got to have someplace to live. And wherever they're going, that is also appreciated in value. And so it becomes a bit of a conundrum.
Yeah. So, even with the strain on the budget that way, large home with stairs, that can be a challenge as you age. And so those are other factors that you also need to think about. And then where are you with your retirement income? Just because you profit from selling that, that doesn't mean that where you go won't eat up that profit too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think the bigger question here for Sandy is exactly what you alluded to, Candace, is where are you on your retirement income? Could you be in a situation where you have an alternative as far as going somewhere to be able to live and be able to actually capture that profit from the house? Would an extra $200,000, $300,000, whatever the case may be, would that be a boost to your overall retirement income? And I think that's something to kind of think about. And there's a very important thing when it comes to real estate that you want to be sure that you factor into the equation. Unlike every other asset that you could potentially sell at a profit, if you sell your primary residence, there is a special carve out in the tax code that would actually make that even more profitable to you. The tax law says that if you capture as much as $500,000 in gain, that is for a husband and wife. If it's a single person, in Sandy's case, it would be $250,000, but it is for a husband and wife up to $500,000 in gain is tax-free from the sale of your primary residence. But Candace, there is a very important carve out here, and this really does kind of keep the house flippers from taking advantage of this tax law.
Yes, and then also I have a question: is there a mortgage? We are approaching this as if this house is paid off, but there may be somebody listening to the show that's in a similar situation that still has a mortgage, and so that's going to be a factor that affects things too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you go back to that tax law thing, if you've lived in that house for over 3 of the last 5 years as your primary residence, then the tax law exemption applies. If you've not done that, if you've not been there 3 years, then that exemption does not apply. So keep that in mind. Now, let's talk about the intangible value of that house, because think about the things that house brings to you that are not monetary.
Yeah, this is about balance. Is it worth giving up that property and trading off the memories of having your grandkids come and stay, and all the time in the pool and things like that, having your family over? So those are definitely factors we want to think about, because you really can't put a price tag on that.
Another factor you want to think about, and I'll tell you from personal experience, is moving.
Yeah.
Think about all the stuff that you've got to pack up and box up and then haul out. And by the way, as you get older, that gets harder.
It gets harder, but that's not a bad thing either on the flip side of that. Downsizing also will get rid of a lot of those things, right? And then that's a less burden to your beneficiaries.
Yeah, there's a term that my daughter and I have used quite frequently. She's the one that's moving, and we've actually used the term yeeting things, just throwing them out, just tossing them out.
It's therapeutic.
Yes, it is. It's very therapeutic. And when you think about, and I kind of think about this like this: if you haven't touched it in about a year, you probably don't need it.
Right.
And so there are a lot of, factors here when it comes to play. First of all, the number one thing that I would say is that if you're thinking about selling a property, you got to think about where you're going to go and what that's going to look like and what that's going to cost. I think the second thing that you want to do, without question, is you want to hire a real estate professional to help you understand this. I am very well versed in all things financial. But when I went to sell my daughter's house, we hired a real estate professional to do that. It was so much easier. We got a full price offer on the house. And so, those are things that are just invaluable. And all the details, all the things that you got to deal with and fool with in a real estate transaction, it is worth the professional and their opinion, their guidance, their direction, and frankly, the peace of mind of knowing that everything is taken care of.
And I would say, especially if you're downsizing from another town. You may know your town, but if you're moving somewhere that's closer to the kids and downsizing, you want a real estate agent that's in the area where you're going.
So, shameless plug for the professionals out there. They that do that. They do a very, very nice job. And then I think from a financial standpoint, you've just got to look at, do the numbers work as far as where you're going to live? Are you going to rent and just absorb that into your budget? And if so, then maybe you do have some capital that could boost your retirement savings. And look, I've never had anybody come in and said, I got too much money in my retirement account. I just don't know what to do with it. That just hasn't happened and probably won't happen in this particular case. You heard the bell. We're going to wrap things up on the Get Ready for the Future show. I'll ask Candace for whatever final thoughts you might have. Candace?
I would just say, if you're unsure and if any of these questions today triggered something in you to think, maybe I can retire, maybe I can't, I'm not sure, then come see us, give us a call, schedule an appointment, sit down with an advisor. We are fiduciaries. We're required to do what's in your best interest. So come in and see us, and we'll sit down and try to figure this out.
Candace, my final thought is very simple. There are a lot of things that you can do with your time. But there is one thing that you can do that can make a huge difference in the rest of your life, and that is to figure out your path to financial independence. We've got a free guide. It is a download for you, 7 steps for financial independence. If you go to getreadyforthefuture.com/steps or text us STEPS at 501-381-5228. We'll be more than happy to put those steps in your hands so you can get started on your path to financial independence. Candace, as we wrap up the show today, I want to just kind of be sure that you don't get a chance to be on the show a whole lot. Just want to talk a little bit about you and your background and your time at GenWealth. I know you came to us about 7 years ago.
Yes, I've been here seven and a half, almost 8 years. Was in the insurance industry before I came aboard. Been securities licensed for, almost 14 years now, I think.
Wow.
Yep. And so I've been doing this a while. I'm in the Bryant office, and so I'd be happy to meet with you and help you figure out retirement.
Candace Stanley and Brian Helps
Yes.
and myself make up one of the teams in the Bryant office. There's another team as well. So if you got an opportunity to be with us in Bryant, we would appreciate the opportunity to serve you. That's going to do it for the Get Ready for the Future show for this week. We appreciate your attention and we thank you for joining us. Be sure to check us out at getreadyforthefuture.com. Take care.
The GenWealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.